Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Find a living in fisheries. The UAS Fisheries Technology Program offers online study from anywhere in Alaska, plus labs and workshops in many Alaska towns.
Is most likely a chum.
Find your living without leaving where you are. Fisheries Technology from UAS.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 28th of April, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, which you can find at weather.gov/Alaska. Call us on the weather info line at 800-472-0391, or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube during the day. You'll get your daily afternoon map briefing around 4 o'clock on YouTube there, kind of a sneak peek at what we'll talk about here on the show a little bit later on. And if you want to see a whole heap and handful of Riverwatch pictures, you can check those out right now at Facebook. Go to NWS Alaska there once you log on. Here's a look at what's going on across the region tonight. We're starting with the flood advisory up around Eagle. Now, the water is opening up even more as we understand it, but there is still a flood advisory until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning now. This is still related to the ice jam located about 10 miles downriver from Eagle near Calico Bluff, which is causing water and ice to back up into the Eagle community itself. The jam shifted late yesterday evening, but it's still holding, and there is flooding being reported around the area. Water levels upriver at Dawson City are only showing minor fluctuations as we understand it now, so a significant surge of water is not expected. To say that again, that is not expected to move downriver over the next few days. In addition, the lower elevation snowpack is gone, of course, as you well know, so a large pulse of snowmelt is not expected at this point either. So those are both good points to make. In either case, as long as the ice jam remains in place, flooding will probably continue. So hopefully there are some improvements there and that things will kind of ease in the next couple days there. But at this point, a flood advisory is still posted until tomorrow morning for the community of Eagle. And we did notice some other areas of open water downstream, so things certainly have the potential to start moving. Let's shift back to the actual weather at hand, and we'll show you the breakup map here in just a moment. The storm force winds are expected to come up across the eastern and northern Gulf as we get into Saturday. Conditions look pretty good tomorrow across the inner channels of southeast, but you're going to notice the winds coming up Friday night and into Saturday. All this broad area of orange here is about 40 to 49 knots. Once you get into the darker colors of orange, that's about 50 to 60 knots, and you start to see that coming up there outside of Cross Sound and as you get into Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather and around the Horn into areas just outside of Prince William Sound. Here's Anchorage, Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, and Kodiak Island. And again, this will be Saturday here when we start to see these peak winds coming up outside of Middleton Island. So if you are planning to make a move out to the high seas there or into the Gulf at least, just keep in mind the winds are going to worsen and get stronger as we go into Saturday. It won't be so bad tomorrow, but by Saturday, conditions should be very different as low pressure starts to move toward the Gulf for the weekend. Now, going back to breakup quickly, you'll notice that we have some open water there past Eagle now, but areas downstream are still mostly ice, it looks like, all the way through Fort Yukon and downriver. There are some more openings there toward the Delta region, and conditions continue to improve there, but at this point, a flood advisory continues for the community of Eagle until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, so watch for further updates there. And we appreciate your updates as always. You can always tell us and show us what you see at NWS Alaska on Facebook, NWS APRFC, which is short for Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center on Twitter. Call us. We love that. We love to talk to you at 800-847-1739. Send us emails there. We've been viewing quite a few of those. And as always, the updates that we're sharing here are first found online at weather.gov/APRFC. So check those places out, bookmark them, and we'll find you there as well in between Alaska weather shows. On to the weather at hand with satellite picture, and this is the weather maker that's moving into the Gulf. You can see a pretty tightly wound low pressure system south of Unalaska. It doesn't have a whole lot of moisture to work with right now, but as conditions change over the next 48 hours, not only is it going to strengthen and become a pretty decent wind maker for the northeastern and northern Gulf, but it's going to latch onto some moisture that's still just outside of our satellite picture at this point. Out across the west, we're seeing a couple things here across the western and northern Bering Sea. A lot of what you're looking at is actually the remnants of the Bering Sea ice and low clouds working across the central and western parts of the Bering there. North and easterly flow continues. That is bringing the warm air that we have across south central and southeast, moving that into the interior and then moving that over the ice. So all of that, of course, is melting just like our Yukon River and the Kuskokwim and most of the Susitna already has. One thing to notice, though, that with this broad east and northeasterly flow moving across the Gulf and across the interior, it's grabbing into warmer air across Canada and bringing that into the middle and western parts of our interior. This is kind of a summery pattern, and with warm and dry conditions across the interior, things are heating up and we are seeing clouds build up, and showers have been passing over the middle Tanana Valley in the last 24 to 48 hours. And yesterday at this time, we were watching a shower become maybe a marginal thunderstorm at that, maybe a lightning strike or two. But this is the type of situation that will get that process started and maybe even invigorated a little bit. So we're still watching for a pocket or two of showers or perhaps even a storm this evening. Probably have a better chance of that happening again tomorrow along the Yukon Valley, and you'll see that in the forecast charts here in just a little bit. For you in southeast, drier weather shifting in. You can see the front working right through the southern parts of the Panhandle tonight, and as that continues progressing northward, conditions should dry out, so any rain that's in the region should probably become a little more showery in nature, but the threat for more rain is going to move back into the picture as we go through the first part of the weekend. Here's the chart. Low pressure right now south of the Kenai Peninsula and right over Kodiak Island at 992 millibars. The front wraps all the way through the eastern Gulf and down into the Pacific Northwest. But this is the system, the back part of that system here that's going to be a little bit stronger. As we go ahead in time, you can see that's kind of taking over the weather picture tonight. Broad areas of light rainfall still possible across the north and eastern Gulf. A trough of low pressure lies across the Alaska Range, and there could be some showers across the western Alaska Range. Most areas north of that will only see showers, if anything at all, and there is a pretty decent patch of dry air working in from areas in the upper Yukon Valley all the way into the Kuskokwim Valley, with some pockets of light rain and showers across the YK Delta. More clouds than anything else for the North Slope. You may see some flurries and some fog, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of precipitation chances there in the next 24 hours. As we get into Friday, watch for a broad area of low pressure to kind of spin up and tighten up across the upper Yukon. With that, we'll notice that the conditions are warm once again, and we'll have an opportunity for some rain and thunder to develop across the Yukon Valley again. Watch for showers across the higher terrain for the Alaska Range down into southwestern Alaska, Kodiak Island, and the Aleutians southeast. Relatively dry weather for you by comparison, but there's still some pop-up showers that could be an issue. The main core of the weather that's coming is still well to your south. That's at 983 millibars by Friday, and you'll notice a slug of moisture working northward and then quickly advancing by Saturday, tightening the pressure gradient across the north and eastern Gulf. That's where those storm force winds come into play, and our low pressure system here has cycled back to 986 millibars. The focus for heavier rainfall will probably be across coastal sections of southeast. As this is moving northward throughout the day on Saturday, there's going to be a drier slug of air once again across the Alaska Range and northward, and then back to the Yukon Valley. Showers and maybe a few more thunderstorm chances there. Snow showers across the Chukchi Sea over St. Lawrence Island to St. Matthew, otherwise clouds for most of the Bering and the Pribilofs. And then out west, you can see the beginnings of a new weather maker moving into the Alaska weather picture. That just kind of creeping up on Shemya as we head into the beginning of the weekend. Let's look at your surface charts. How about what happened today? Most areas in southeast made it at least into the upper 40s. I'm sure many folks saw temperatures in the lower 50s by late hour 4 to about 5 o'clock. 47 in Sitka, about the same for Ketchikan and Nanette, the capital city. Also mild today with a few showers. And 40s and 50s around Prince William Sound. 50, in fact, for Valdez. And the report still shows that snow is on the ground there, but it is waning. It looks like you're down to about 11 inches there on the report. Only Barrow has 4 inches. Looks like Bettles is showing 7. there's not much else to report as far as official snow depth measurements in the state, so it is going quickly. 49 in Gulkana, 50 in Northway today, 47 in Anchorage, 51 in Homer, 57 for Talkeetna, and Rainy Pass saw temperatures in the lower 40s today. Fairbanks back to 56. Eagle was 55. 54 in Fort Yukon. 25 for AKwx Pass after a start around 10 this morning. That was cold spot honors for the entire state. 28 in Barrow. 43 in Nome. 41 for Unalakleet. Almost 60 degrees in McGrath today. 56 was the temperature around Bethel. 39 in Nunivak Island. Southwestern temperatures, including King Salmon and Dillingham, in the lower 50s. Upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island made it to 47 on the northeast corner there, and Adak and Atka were in the mid-40s, with the Pribilofs also in the lower to mid-40s. Southwest temperatures overnight will hover just below 40 degrees. Nome near 30, 13 in Barrow. Fort Yukon about 30 degrees. Areas around the middle Tanana Valley will see temps just at or maybe even above freezing. Eagle down to 27. South Central and the Cook Inlet region, it's the Susitna Valley, probably talking about temperatures just shy of 40 degrees, 39 in Kodiak Island, upper 30s to low 40s for most of Southeast, with highs tomorrow closing in on 50 or above for Juneau and Southeast. 40s and 50s for Prince William Sound. Milder still for the Cook Inlet region. Anchorage 54 degrees, about the same for Talkeetna. Fairbanks could be hotter at 56 degrees. 42 in Fort Yukon, 35 for AKwx Pass, 20s to almost 30 degrees for the Arctic coast. Kotzebue, you're looking at temps closing in on the mid-40s tomorrow, 43 in Nome. The Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, most areas are going to see readings in the lower to mid-50s by the afternoon. Once you get out toward the coast, places like Nunivak Island and St. Lawrence Island will likely be in the 20s and 30s, so much colder on the water. 38 in St. Paul, 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, and lower to mid-40s for the Aleutian Shemya, only 39. IFR conditions are expected for the North Slope to start tomorrow for the northern half of the Seward Peninsula into Kotzebue Sound, St. Lawrence Island to areas north of Emonic, and St. Paul all the way out toward Kiska, with regions around Prince William Sound, Seward, and outside of Middleton Island looking at IFR. And IFR around Chilkoot and White Pass and some of the higher terrain in the morning, but improvements noted there by the afternoon. MVFR will continue for most of Southeast, Prince William Sound, and parts of Cook Inlet and the Barren Islands, including Kodiak Island, as well as some of our western Alaska Range passes and most of the Seward Peninsula, with IFR noted to continue through the afternoon for the North Slope tomorrow. Here's your pass conditions. In AKwx Pass and Adigan Pass, we expect to see MVFR conditions through most of the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will probably hold at MVFR, as will Rainy Pass throughout your Friday. Windy Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions improving and developing throughout the afternoon. And Isabel Pass, we should see VFR throughout the afternoon as the clouds in the ceiling improve a little bit. Mentasta Pass looking for MVFR to start, with VFR to end the day, just as we expect in Tanita Pass for Friday afternoon. Portage Pass, likely IFR to start the day, and we'll hope for some improvements there. There will be some rain in the region. And Chilkoot and White Pass also expected to see some improvements throughout your Friday. The freezing levels indicate there's a lot of warm air aloft along the Yukon Valley. Levels there at or above 4,000 feet. You can still see some cold pockets, though, lingering around the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, and into Southeast. The surface freezing line now has jogged north of Norton Sound and north of the Middle Yukon Valley into Southeast, so plenty of warm air to be had. Icing potential tells us that we have some areas of wetter and cold air above 4 to about 7,000 feet around Norton Sound to St. Lawrence Island, southwestern Alaska and Bristol Bay, and north of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, and then also across the north and eastern Gulf Coast above 4,000 feet, some of that wrapping into the northern parts of the Cook Inlet, most of that reaching only isolated moderate throughout the daytime tomorrow. Our jet stream indicates that our main storm track is still well south of Alaska here. However, some of those pieces of storm energy are getting invigorated by this stronger southwesterly flow at 150 knots, and that's what's going to work that next impulse of weather into the Gulf of Alaska as we head into Saturday, and again bring some stronger winds across the north and eastern coastal regions to at least storm force as we go into Saturday afternoon. At 9,000 feet, you see our broad southerly flow here is also aiding and abetting that warm and wet air into the coastal regions and allowing that warmth to spread even further north toward the Arctic coast. Now, wind speeds up north are not very strong, but it is pushing that warm air your way. Now, on the back side of that, west of the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island, you can see we're still in that northerly regime. and that trend will continue there. There are some faster moving areas of wind to note, and some of those are approaching places like Craig and Klawock at 9,000 feet. You can see 70-knot winds pointed there. At 3,000 feet, winds are a little bit slower in that region, but you can still see a healthy region of faster moving winds out over the open water. Southerlies continue across the interior and the Alaska Range, and they're fairly slow at about 10 to 15 knots. Slightly faster winds here west of the Killbucks, out across the YK Delta and northward toward the western Brooks Range. And northerlies are in effect for more regions of the Aleutians and the Pribilofs, about 15 to as high as 25 at 3,000 feet. Turbulence, I would watch for some bumps as we get into the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, all the way out toward, let's say Gustavus, Sitka, and southward toward Petersburg, Craig, Klawock, and maybe as far east as Ketchikan. A lot of this will probably worsen as we get into the morning hours on Saturday and throughout the daytime. It looks like this will focus on regions generally below 6,000 feet, and also expecting some light to isolated moderate turbulence across the regions for Adak and westward toward Kiska there. So watch for conditions to change as we get into Saturday and certainly Sunday as low pressure is strengthening in the Gulf. Not only will that worsen visibility and increase rainfall across southeast, but again, we're watching for storm force winds at the surface. So something to keep note of for aviators and mariners alike as we head into the weekend. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with a look at the sea ice edge and of course the rest of your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Transit fever.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plough Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. There's something really exciting happening in the sky in a few weeks, and it involves the closest planet to the sun.
That's right, James. On Monday, May 9th, 2016, we will get to see the planet Mercury crossing in front of the sun.
We call that a transit of Mercury, and it's something you don't get to see often.
What are we talking about? Let's show you.
Transits of Mercury across the sun are rare events where Mercury passes directly between Earth and the sun. It's like an eclipse, but not nearly as dramatic. From Earth's perspective, we'll see Mercury as a little black dot crossing in front of the sun. And even though they're rare, these Mercury transits are a lot more frequent than transits of Venus.
That's right, James. On average, there are between 13 and 14 transits of Mercury visible each century. This is mostly because Mercury is much closer to the sun and it orbits more rapidly. A Mercury year is only 88 days long, so it passes between the Earth and Sun several times each year. However, Mercury's orbit and Earth's orbit are inclined to each other, so most of the time Mercury passes above or below the Sun as it passes us.
Here on Earth, transits of Mercury happen in May and November. The first observation of a transit of Mercury was on November 7, 1631, by French astronomer Pierre Gassendi. The most recent transits happened in 1999, 2003, and 2006. After this one, the next transit will occur on November 11, 2019. But after that, we won't see another until November 13, 2032.
Transits of Mercury are not only visible from Earth. On June 3, 2014, the Curiosity rover on Mars viewed Mercury transiting the Sun. This marked the first time in history where a planetary transit was viewed from a location other than the Earth.
Speaking of which, if you happen to be visiting Mars on November 10, 2084, make sure you take your solar filters with you, because that's the day our planet Earth will transit the Sun from Mars' perspective. If you had a telescope with you, you'll even be able to see Earth's moon.
Yes, we know, that's almost 68 years from now. But think about it. People are living longer these days, and we might have astronauts visiting Mars by that time.
Besides, if you don't want to wait until 2084, visit Jupiter on January 10, 2026, and you can see Earth transiting the Sun then.
The 2016 transit of Mercury will happen between sunrise and 2:38 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Monday, May 9th. In next week's episode, we'll give you all the details on how to safely observe this unique event. So now let's check out what's going on in the rest of the sky.
Okay, we've got our skies set up for shortly before midnight any night this week, and you'll get to see 3 planets gracing the sky at the same time. If you look toward the southwest, you'll see the backwards question mark of the stars that make the head of Leo the lion. Jupiter is just below the triangle of stars that mark Leo's tail.
Using a telescope, you'll be able to see 4 star-like objects to the right and left of Jupiter. These are Jupiter's 4 largest moons, and each night they'll be in a different position.
If you look toward the southeast, you'll see the stars of Scorpius the Scorpion, and among them you'll see 2 bright lights that form a triangle with the star Antares. Mars will be the brightest of the 3 lights, and at midnight it will appear at the top of the triangle. Saturn is the light on the bottom left, and Antares is the light on the bottom right.
Mars is getting brighter right now because it's about to enter what astronomers call opposition. When Mars is near opposition, it's at its biggest and brightest. Saturn is also nearing opposition, but that won't occur until June 3rd.
So there you have it. At midnight this week, you have Jupiter to the southwest, and Mars, Saturn, and Antares to the southeast.
And in 2 weeks, on May 9th, the must-see event of 2016, the transit of Mercury. Keep looking up.
As you would expect in the Bering Sea, with the recent warmth moving off the continent and over the water, conditions continue to more or less mush out over the seas as well. A lot of this ice is shrinking rapidly and breaking up as it moves to the south and west, and we expect that trend to continue. The other thing to note is any ice out there around St. Lawrence Island, especially on the south side, is pretty unstable. The northern side continues to see some higher concentration and higher thickness, but extra care should be taken if you're around St. Lawrence Island to St. Matthew Island looking for stable ice for hunting activities there. So keep that in mind, and as always, please check the latest ice conditions before going out. The ice conditions around Norton Sound are also very unstable right now, as anything that appears to be shore fast likely is not and is rotting in place there. So be very careful there. You can check out the latest conditions at weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php for a map similar to this, where you can also check the forecast and the concentrations there in the thickness, which is not what this shows. This is just a concentration map. Make sure you check those anytime from our Alaska Sea Ice program there that covers all of the Alaska coastline year-round. Here's a look at the marine forecast now. Watch for some big changes between Friday and Saturday on this map and for South Central here in just a minute with that low pressure system moving in. Friday itself doesn't look too bad. Southerlies working up the interchannels about 15 to 20, 3 to 4 foot seas on the inside, and about 9 to maybe 10 foot seas there across the outer coast. Around 10 to 15 knot winds are expected from the southwest and south as we go into Friday. Well, look at the change here. A big change on Saturday. Winds come up to storm force outside of Cross Sound to Yakutat, 50 knots there, 40 to 45 south of Sitka. On the inside, from Stevens Passage and northward, you'll get into about 25 knot winds, 5 foot seas there, and Clarence Strait seas could come up to 11 feet on a southeasterly flow at 40 knots. For South Central, similar changes are expected. For southeasterly winds blowing into Prince William Sound and outside of Prince William Sound, 15 to 20 with 9 foot seas on the outside, 11 foot seas east of Kodiak Island, and inside of Cook Inlet, 20 knots there from about Kenai southward, Callaghan Island, all the way to the western Barrens at around 20 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas. Big changes on Saturday. Look at that, a big strong east wind moving across. Storm force winds there outside of Prince William Sound and the northern Gulf. 18-foot seas are expected with winds to 45 to 50 knots and higher gusts, in some cases to 60 or 70 for some parts of the northeastern Gulf are possible. So watch for that and plan for that if you're going out. 30 knots in Prince William Sound, 7-foot seas expected there. Considerably different day than what you'll start out with on Friday. Northeasterlies coming down Cook Inlet, 30, 40, even 45 knots west of the Barrens, with seas coming up to 7 feet in the northern Cook Inlet region. 12-foot seas west of the Barrens and 12-foot seas also in Shelikof Strait. So again, Saturday is going to be a different day. If you go out on Friday, plan for things to change quickly during Saturday if you're out. For Friday, southeasterly winds inside of Bristol Bay at 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Northeasterlies down the Bering Sea coast at 15, 20 knots coming in from a southerly direction for the Pacific coast. And I look for about 11 to 12-foot seas there for Saturday. Definitely a shift in the wind, but conditions won't be as strong there as that weather system will be a lot further to the east. Northeasterlies inside of Bristol Bay with a 7-foot sea, 11 to 12-foot seas across the Pacific coast with about a 30-knot wind there on Saturday. For the Aleutians, a broad northerly flow anywhere from 15 to about 25 knots there. 4 to 7-foot seas from Unalaska to AKwx, 7-foot seas out in the west, and 7 to 9-foot seas there across the Pacific coast on a 15 to 20-knot wind for Friday. A little bit of a change out in the west on Saturday with north or southeasterlies kicking in. Generally north and westerly winds will continue for the central and eastern chain with winds from about 20 to 25. Seas from 7 to 8, even 9 feet across the Bering Sea coast and 6 to 8 feet across the Pacific coast starting the weekend. Northerlies for the west coast over some rotting ice, of course. Look for 3 to 4-foot seas in the north and as high as 6-foot seas across the Pribilofs, and the northerly flow at 25 knots. Freezing spray still an issue across the north over the open water, of course, and northwesterlies around Nunivak Island and northward towards St. Lawrence Island as we get into Saturday. Seas are small, about 2 to 3 feet around the open waters, and 4 to 5-foot seas are expected from the Kuskokwim Delta to the Pribilofs on a 20 to 25-knot wind on Saturday. For the north slope, easterlies blowing over the Beaufort Sea ice, 10 to 15 knots. North and easterly winds coming down the Chukchi Sea, 15 to 25. That's for Friday. For Saturday, winds diminish even more for the Chukchi Sea. In fact, they go pretty light around Point Barrow. 5 knots there expected as we start up Saturday, and light easterly winds continue for the Beaufort Sea coast from about 5 to 10 knots starting the weekend. Recapping tonight's weather, there's still a flood advisory for the community of Eagle thanks to flooding in town and an ice jam about 10 miles downriver around the Calico Rock area. We expect that to ease up as we get into the next couple of days here, but there's of course no telling when Mother Nature will help us out. Flood advisory continues until tomorrow morning, and watch for further updates if you're in that community. In the meantime, we are watching a storm system move into the central Gulf as that strengthens heading into Friday and Saturday. That will bring up the winds and the rain for southeast. Some cases we're looking at storm force winds in the north and eastern Gulf going into Saturday with a chance for a few storms in the interior. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.